Hey all. I wanted to go through a quick little discussion and lesson on A Whole Lot of Love, the way Jimmy did it on the studio recording. A lot of people doing it all over YouTube. But pick the little bits of the ones that you like. The first thing is the custom. He didn't use the burst, the standard. He used the custom for the studio recording. A couple of things give it away. One, in that new book, he said, I used the custom. Case closed. Argument over. He used the custom. But you can actually hear it. For one, especially go on YouTube and look up Whole Lot of Love isolated guitar. In fact, all the tracks, all the isolated tracks you can find on YouTube. But on the guitar track, it sounds to me, I'm going to do it on, just for the sake of this discussion on the lesson, on the bridge pickup, but it sounds to me like Jimmy's on the middle position, which you can hear pretty clearly, again, on the isolated track as opposed to the finished recording. But that's one thing. But also, when it gets to the freak out part in the middle, and they're going through all that stuff, on the isolated track, you can hear stuff that was ultimately, I think, either mixed very low in the studio, the finished recording, or mixed out completely. But you do hear them on this clean, isolated track of Jimmy's guitar. And when it gets into the middle, Jimmy, you can hear him doing stuff with the vibrato bar. I think he had a Bigsby on his. I think it was a real Bigsby. Or I don't know what kind of bar he had. I have to look at the pictures again. But he actually did, had the thing pushed down, he was messing around with the low E string and stuff. So he is definitely using that custom and using the bar on it. So that settles the guitar discussion. The riff, you all know how to play it. Right. But like Jimmy would play it live. I mean, now granted, that when they played Whole Lot of Love in the set, it would have been after 2.5 hours, and they're kind of past the point of any subtlety or nuance at that point in the show, and they're just given the encore parts. But so he wasn't really doing it like the studio cut. But on the studio cut, it's a very subtle and very well played rhythm part, and so that's what we'll go through. Now it's right. So on low E, 7, 5, 5 on A, 2 and E5. Now the first thing is you just sit there. If you've never done this or you want to work on this, it's a good exercise. Sit there for 2 minutes and just do. That's the rhythm of it. Like. That's the rhythm of it. It's not. Well, you could do. I don't hear it like that. I hear it like that. As opposed to two different things there. But I hear it as. Now on the riff, the little subtlety thing, and he does the same thing on that riff for. He hits the string and then the open adjacent string next to it. That's what he does on this one. So to get the riff, you have to go. Normally when I would bend an E or an A or D string on the upper end of the fretboard, you would bend them. Bend them toward the bottom of the neck. But on this one you bend it up because you're going to hit that. You hit that adjacent D string that's open next to it. And that's slightly muted as opposed to. It's not that. So you can hear that when you slightly bend it slightly, and it is slight. And then the open D next to it, you get that sort of wobbly kind of sound to it. And that's the trick. The hard part is getting the D and the A and the D string without getting the G string. And you hear it in the final one. There's like 2 or 3 times during the course of the song when you can really hear it. But you hear it a lot more clearly on the isolated track. When Jimmy does get the G string. You know, there are a few times when he hits it. And it's a nice little effect. It's a nice little punch in there. But it's also not just this. It's not just. It's not that. It's a. On the low end, that's what it's doing. It's that. So you gotta. That's in there, you know. Okay, so you get to. Want a whole lot of love, right? It's not. It doesn't go down to D, it just goes. It's all of them across except for the low E at 7. And again, on the isolated one, you can hear. He's actually hitting all of them. It's not just. It's. You gotta get. That takes a little practice, but it's so rewarding when you get it. Then you get to the middle. Now coming out of it, it's just. We're not going to go through the solo, but just hitting an E5 there. And then get back into it. And and it stops way down. You know, you stop on the E, way down inside. Now, on the live versions, they would go D-A. But they don't on the studio one, they do E-A. You can actually hear them slide down slightly. Why they did it differently live, D-A, I don't know. But on the studio one, it's definitely E-A. And then back to Now that's a little thing you got to get at the end, and when you watch people cover it, they don't really do that little part at the end, but it is in there every other time through. It's not quite every other time through, because one of them he misses, and then he gets back on the count of every other one. But it's on the A string, it's 12. Low E string open, 12, 11. You can definitely hear it on the released version too, the final album. But some really cool little subtle stuff going on in that one. So things we know, definitely on the custom, probably on the middle pickup selection. the DA thing, and then this thing, and then the middle part. Just a few of the little things going on in Whole Lotta Love where, you know, it's sort of a caveman riff. It's so much more than that. You know, that's what they might have done live because it was just at that point, please the crowd, give them one to go home with, and then hit the showers. But the studio one is just an absolutely stunning recording. And in fact, more than the isolated guitar part, which is great, by the way. Listen to Bonham's isolated drums. Holy cow. The first minute before it gets into the freak out section is just some of the most incredible rock drumming you'll ever hear. Every student of rock drums who wants to be a rock drummer needs to listen to that and study it. Study that first minute and a half before it gets to the freak out part. Because that is just, there's so much power, but he's pulling everything back. Not quite behind the beat, but it's the kind of song that could very easily turn into Immigrant Song, you know. But it's he pulls it back, and there's so much soul and feel in the way he's doing that little drum riff, which is kind of mimicking the guitar riff. You got to hear it. It's fantastic. Plus, you also get, you know, as it goes on, when he does fills and stuff, he's one of those drummers, and Mooney was one of those, that when they do a fill, they kind of go, ah, and they scream. There's a legend, I don't know if it's true, maybe drummers out there know, that when you scream, you kind of are plugging up your ear. Ah, it kind of plugs your ear. So they say that when drummers do a fill or do a big cymbal crash, if you scream, it kind of protects your hearing a little bit. I don't know if that's true or whether they just scream like a bear because they can. It's just so charming to hear. And a lot of Bonzo screams you can hear on the final studio recording. I mean, very easy to hear clearly on the isolated tracks, but they do show up, and it almost sounds like someone screaming behind Plant. That's because that's what it is. It's Bonzo doing those ah kind of screams during his fills. Just an absolutely perfect rock recording. Everybody in it. Plant is great, and on the isolated Plant vocal, there's a lot of isolated. There's a lot of stuff that he was doing especially in the freak out part. Some of those things got mixed out. So you know, he goes right when it goes into it, he goes, I don't want much, and then right after it, just a little bit. So he's quoting like old blues tunes. That just a little bit song. I don't want much, just a teeny weeny bit of your love. So he does some things. In one part, he goes timber. You know. There's humor in it, but all that stuff a lot of that got mixed out of it. Go back and revisit A Whole Lotta Love. You'll appreciate it much more. Good luck.